She's faking it, Fatima hissed, stepping over her mother-in-law's twitching body to answer the ringing phone. In a Moroccan village where family honor is law, Fatima's cruelty to her mother-in-law was an open secret. Ali, her husband, documented every slap and withheld meal in secret, crafting his revenge from afar. Now, with the old woman's stroke and the will's revelations, Fatima's carefully constructed lies teeter on collapse. Wait! Before telling what happened next, if your mother's love is the greatest gift, hit that like button and subscribe right now. The old woman gasped, a ragged sound tearing from her throat. Her hand flew to her chest, fingers clawing at a simple cotton dress. Her eyes rolled back in her head. She pitched forward, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Her body trembled, a series of small, jerky movements. Fatima stood over her, foam pressed to her ear. She listened for a moment, then spoke into the receiver. No, nothing is wrong. Just cleaning. She lowered the phone, ending the call. The old woman lay still, only the faint movement of her chest showing she was alive. Fatima walked past her towards the small kitchen. She reached for the kettle, her movements slow and deliberate. She filled it with water from the tap, then placed it on the small gas stove. The flame ignited with a soft whoosh. She watched the kettle, her face blank. The twitching stopped. The old woman's body was still. A sharp rap came at the door. Fatima turned her head slowly. It was Amina, the neighbor. Amina rapped again, harder this time. Fatima, is everything all right? We heard a noise, Amina called through the door. Fatima walked to the door, unbolting it. She opened it just wide enough to see Amina's face. Ah, Amina, peace be upon you, Fatima said. Her voice was calm. Everything is fine. My mother-in-law, she tripped, fell down. She is resting now. Amina peered past Fatima into the dim room. A trip? It sounded louder than a trip. Just clumsy, I suppose, Fatima said, shrugging slightly. She's old, you know. Amina's eyes lingered on the floor behind Fatima. Fatima stepped further into the doorway, blocking the view. Is she hurt badly? Amina asked. No, just a little shaken. She's lying down, Fatima replied. Thank you for checking, Amina. It is kind. Amina hesitated, her brow furrowed. Perhaps I should just look in. Make sure? There's no need, Fatima said quickly. She needs quiet. The fall tired her. Amina nodded slowly, though her expression remained troubled. All right, Fatima. If you need anything, call out. I will. Thank you. Fatima closed the door firmly, bolting it again. She leaned her back against the wood, closing her eyes for a brief second. The kettle began to whistle. She pushed off the door and returned to the kitchen. She poured the hot water into a glass, added mint leaves and sugar. She stirred the tea, the spoon clinking against the glass. She walked back into the main room, stepping carefully around the old woman's still form. The carved wooden box sat on the shelf, its lid slightly ajar, catching the weak morning light. Fatima did not look at it. She knelt beside the old woman. Her fingers went to the simple headscarf the old woman wore. She adjusted it, pulling it lower on the forehead. Her fingers brushed against the skin of the temple, then the cheekbone. She pressed lightly, feeling the shape beneath the skin. She pulled the scarf tighter, covering more of the face. She smoothed the fabric. A car pulled up outside. The doctor. Fatima stood up, leaving the tea on the small table. She walked to the door, unbolting it again. The doctor entered, his bag in his hand. He was a young man, new to the village. Amina stood behind him on the doorstep, watching. Peace be upon you, doctor, Fatima said. And upon you, the doctor replied. Amina said there was a fall? Yes, just a trip, Fatima said, leading him into the room. She gestured towards the old woman on the floor. The doctor knelt, opening his bag. He took out a stethoscope. He listened to the old woman's chest. He checked her pulse. He gently lifted an eyelid. He pressed fingers to her neck. She's had a stroke, the doctor said, his voice quiet. Fatima nodded slowly. Ah, a stroke. The doctor carefully examined the old woman's head and face. His fingers probed gently. He paused, his touch lingering near her temple, then her arm. There are some old bruises here, the doctor said, looking up at Fatima. And on her arm, Fatima's face remained calm. She bruises easily, doctor. Her skin is thin. From her age, the doctor looked from the bruises to Fatima's impassive face. He looked back at the old woman. He sighed softly. She needs to go to the hospital, the doctor said, immediately. Later that day, the small main room of the house was filled with people, family members, neighbors, the village notary. The old woman was gone, taken to the hospital in the nearest town. Fatima sat on a cushion, her hands clasped in her lap. She watched the notary, a thin man with spectacles, as he unfolded a document. This was Ali's will. He had written it before he left for Tangier for his carpentry job, a job that would keep him away for months. Fatima felt a small, private smile touch her lips. Soon, this house, everything, would be hers. The notary cleared his throat. note. He began to read. He read about Ali's small savings, his tools, the land outside the village. Fatima listened, her smile growing. Then the notary paused. He looked over his spectacles at the assembled family. "There is a special instruction here," the notary said. He held up a sealed envelope. It was a simple paper envelope, but it felt heavy in his hand. Ali wrote, "If my mother dies or is incapacitated, open this envelope first." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Faces turned towards Fatima. Her smile vanished. What was this? The notary carefully broke the seal. He pulled out several items, not papers, photographs, and a small folded note. He held up the first photograph. It showed the old woman sitting in a chair, her arm twisted behind her back, Fatima's hand gripping it tightly. The date was visible on the corner of the photo, small and clear. "Weeks ago." A murmur went through the room. The notary held up another photo. Fatima standing over the old woman, a plate of food in her hand. The old woman's face turned away, thin and drawn. Another date. The notary's voice was flat as he read the note. It was in Ali's familiar, neat handwriting. "To anyone who reads this," the notary read aloud, "I saw, I knew. I could not stop it while I was here, but I have prepared." Fatima's breath hitched. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, began to tremble. Not from fear, from a cold, burning rage. How could he? How dare he? The notary continued reading from the main will, following instructions from the note. Ali's will states that if his mother is incapacitated and this envelope is opened, the entire inheritance, all property, all savings is to be placed in the care of Amina, the neighbor. Amina gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The notary read on. "The inheritance will be used solely for the care and comfort of my mother for the rest of her life. If my mother passes away while incapacitated, the remaining inheritance will be given to Amina for her kindness to my mother." Fatima shot to her feet. The cushion fell behind her. "What?" she shrieked. Her voice was raw, unlike her earlier calm tone. "This is a trick, a lie." The notary held up the photos again. "These were found in the envelope, Fatima." Dated Ali's hand. He knew? A distant cousin whispered. Fatima stared at the notary, at the photos in his hand. She looked at Amina, whose face was pale with shock. She looked at the wooden box on the shelf, the one Ali had carved for her, the one she had ignored. Its lid was still ajar. "He couldn't," Fatima muttered. "He wouldn't." The notary folded the will. "These are the terms, Fatima. As written, witnessed." Fatima's hands clenched into fists. Her knuckles were white. The rage boiled inside her, hot and sharp. Ali, he had watched. He had planned. He had trapped her. She looked around the room at the faces staring at her. They weren't just shocked. There was accusation in their eyes now. They had suspected, perhaps, but now they knew. The photos, Ali's words. Fatima took a step back, then another. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thick, the faces blurred into a single judging mass. The notary spoke again, his voice fading as Fatima's thoughts roared. "You must care for her yourself, or forfeit everything." Care for her, the woman she had tormented, the woman who had seen her, truly seen her, and judged her? Never. Fatima turned and ran. She ran out of the room, out of the house, leaving the stunned family, the notary, the damning photos, and the wooden box behind. She ran down the dusty path, away from the village, away from the eyes that now knew her secret. She ran towards the road, towards anywhere but here. Fatima ran. The dusty path blurred under her feet. She reached the main road, not looking back at the village shrinking behind her. She flagged down a shared taxi heading towards the city. She squeezed into the back seat, pulling her scarf low over her face. The other passengers, strangers, paid her no mind. The taxi sped away, leaving the familiar mountains behind. Hours later, the taxi dropped her near the edge of Fez. The air here was different, thicker, with a smell of spices and exhaust fumes. She pulled the wooden box from her worn bag, clutching it tightly. She plunged into the labyrinthine alleys of the Medina. The walls were high, the passages narrow and winding. Donkeys laden with goods pushed past her. Vendors shouted their wares. The noise was overwhelming. She felt eyes on her everywhere, though no one seemed to look directly. She saw a policeman standing near a fountain ahead. Panic flared. She swerved sharply into a side alley, bumping into a stall piled high with dates. Baskets tumbled, dates scattered across the cobblestones. "You there! Stop!" a voice shouted from behind her. She didn't look back. She ran, the box heavy in her hand. It rattled with each step. Something small and hard shifted inside. She remembered Ali showing her the false bottom, a secret compartment beneath the velvet lining. He had put something in there once, saying it was a backup. A backup for what? She hadn't asked. Now she knew. It was his evidence, the memory card. She ran past a wall, painted with a mural. It was a stern-faced woman, her eyes seeming to follow swallow Fatima. It looked like her mother-in-law. Fatima flinched, turning another corner sharply. The Medina swallowed her. Ali sat on the floor of their small home, a block of cedar wood in his lap. His hands moved with practiced ease, a small chisel shaping the intricate rose motif on the lid of the box. He heard his mother's voice from the next room, raised in a thin, reedy shout. Fatima's voice answered, sharp and cold. Eat it now. A crash. The sound of something breaking. Ali's hand jerked. The chisel slit, slicing across his thumb. Blood welled instantly, bright red against the pale wood. He watched the blood drip onto the unfinished carving. He didn't cry out. His mother shuffled into the doorway, leaning heavily on her cane. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. Ali, she whispered. Allah sees. He met her gaze, then looked back at his bleeding thumb. He wiped the blood onto a rag, staining it crimson. He finished carving the rose, his movements precise, despite the throbbing pain. He opened the box. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny object, smaller than his little finger. A camera. He carefully tucked it into the false bottom he had carved months ago, hidden beneath the velvet. He pressed the lid shut. He picked up his phone and took a picture of his mother, sitting in her chair, her arm twisted behind her back. Fatima's hand gripped her arm tightly, just visible at the edge of the frame. The date on the phone screen glowed clearly. Inspector Khalil sat at his desk, a stack of photographs spread out before him. He picked one up, turning it in his hand. It was a blurry image taken from a low angle. He saw the mother-in-law's face, gaunt and tired. In the background, reflected in a polished metal teapot, was Fatima. She was smirking, a cruel twist of her lips, as the old woman struggled to push herself up from the floor. Khalil's jaw tightened. He put the photo down. Get me the neighbor, he said to the officer standing nearby. Amina, now. Fatima found a small, dark cafe deep within the Medina. The air was thick with the smell of coffee and tobacco. She sat at a corner table, the wooden box on the seat beside her. She watched people pass by the open doorway. Every face seemed to linger too long. Every glance felt like an accusation. She saw a man in a crisp white shirt walking past. He looked like a policeman. Inspector Khalil. She stood up, grabbing the box. She walked quickly out of the cafe, catching up to him on the narrow street. Inspector, she said, her voice low. Khalil stopped, turning to face her. His eyes were sharp, unreadable. Fatima held out the box. We need to talk privately. He looked at the box, then at her face. He nodded, gesturing towards the cafe she had just left. They sat at the same corner table. Fatima slid the box across the worn surface. Her fingers, stained with henna from weeks ago, trembled slightly. She opened the lid, revealing the neat stacks of banknotes she had taken from Ali's hidden stash before she fled. This covers 3 years' salary, she said, her voice barely a whisper. More, the photos stay hidden. This never happened. Khalil picked up the box. He ran a finger over the intricate rose motif. Like your husband hid these? He asked. His voice was calm, too calm. He pressed a hidden catch near the rose. The false bottom clicked open. He pulled out a small memory card. He held it between his thumb and forefinger. He was thorough, Khalil said. Fatima stared at the memory card. Her breath caught in her throat. That's not mine, she stammered. Khalil looked at her, his expression hardening. He closed the false bottom, the click echoing in the quiet cafe. He gripped the box tightly. The delicate rose motif on the lid cracked under his pressure. Outside the cafe, a street vendor selling oranges paused. He held up his phone, aiming the camera through the open window. He zoomed in on the table, on the woman with the trembling hands, and the man in the white shirt holding a wooden box. Amina sat in Inspector Khalil's office. The room was small, sparsely furnished. A glass of steaming mint tea sat on the desk in front of her. The steam rose, fogging her glasses. She took them off, wiping them with the edge of her scarf. She was always wonderful, different, Amina said, her voice soft but steady. Even as a child, her sister had a kitten, a tiny, helpless thing. It cried all the time. Fatima said it was annoying annoying her. One day, it stopped crying. Khalil was scribbling in a worn notebook. She killed it? Amina nodded, her gaze distant, drowned it in the well. Her father found out. He didn't punish her. He said, some problems require practical solutions. That's when she learned cruelty works. Khalil stopped writing. He looked at Amina and the mother-in-law. She saw it too, Amina said, her voice tightening. He tried to talk to Fatima, said she'd fix her, help her. Instead, Amina's voice trailed off. She looked at the photo of the mother-in-law lying in the hospital bed that Khalil had placed on his desk. Instead, she became the next problem requiring a practical solution. The tea leaves swirled at the bottom of her glass, forming a dark swirling shape that looked like a small curled up animal. Fatima stood on a crowded ferry dock. The air smelled of salt and fish. Omar, a man she had met in Fez, stood beside her. He was leaning against his motorcycle, its engine idling, a low rumble beneath the noise of the dock. He had promised to get her out of the country. All he wanted was the wooden box. Ready? Omar asked, holding out his hand. Fatima clutched the box. You swore you would help me. Not sell me out. The inspector pays more for this, Omar said, his eyes on the box. He snatched it from her hand. You swore! Fatima shrieked, grabbing his wrist. Omar laughed. He twisted his wrist free and revved the motorcycle's engine. The bike lurched forward. Fatima held onto his arm, dragged behind the bike on the rough concrete. 10 feet, maybe more. Her hands scraped against the ground. She cried out, letting go. Omar sped away, the wooden box held aloft. The box skidded across the dock, bouncing once before tumbling over the edge. It hit the water with a splash. Fatima scrambled to the edge, watching as it sank. Just before it disappeared beneath a murky surface, a ray of sunlight caught the side. She saw it, Ali's initials carved into the wood. Days later, fishermen dredging the harbor pulled up the wooden box in their nets. Its carvings were warped and swollen with water. Inspector Khalil was called to the dock. He carefully pried the lid open. Water spilled out. Floating among the debris inside were several photographs. They were waterlogged, but the images were still clear. Fatima forcing spoonfuls of medication into her mother-in-law's mouth. Fatima standing over the old woman's bed, holding a pillow. Allah protect us, one of the fishermen muttered, crossing himself. He pointed to a small mark carved into the side of the box, near the bottom. This is Hassan's work, the wood carver. Ali's friend, Khalil, examined one of the photos. He saw the date stamped on the corner. The day before the stroke, he said softly. He reached inside the box. Again, something was stuck to the back of a photo. A piece of paper, also waterlogged. It was part of the will. Ali's handwriting. If my wife flees, Khalil read aloud, his voice flat. She confesses. Stuck beneath the will fragment was a child's drawing, folded and faded. It was a simple house, drawn in crayon. Their house. But one window was colored in solid black. Fatima stumbled into a large, empty mosque. The cool marble floor felt smooth beneath her bare feet. The afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the walls. The call to prayer began, echoing through the vast space. Fatima collapsed before the mihrab, the prayer niche indicating the direction of Mecca. She clawed at her hijab, tearing at the fabric. She ripped it off, throwing it onto the marble. She screamed, a raw, guttural sound into the tiles of the mihrab. Mercy? She shrieked, laughing wildly. The sound bounced off the walls. He planned this from the start. He watched. He waited. An old imam, his face lined with age and wisdom, knelt beside her. Shame is the first step to mercy, my daughter, he said softly. Mercy? Fatima repeated, her voice hoarse. She slammed her fist against the tiles of the mihrab. A tile came loose. Beneath it, in a small, dark cavity, lay something. A small, sharp chisel crossed with her mother-in-law's rosary beads. Ali's chisel. Fatima picked up the chisel. Its edge was sharp, reflecting her fractured face distorted in the curved metal. Ali sat beside his mother's bed. She was frail, her breathing shallow. He stroked her hand, her skin thin and papery. He held the folded will in his other hand. I have made arrangements, mother, he whispered. If something happens to you, if she hurts you again. His mother's eyes fluttered open. She gripped his hand weakly. What arrangements? She whispered back. I have documented everything, Ali said. The photos, the recordings. I have given instructions to the notary. When she opens this, the whole village will know. Everyone will know what she did. And if she stays? His mother asked, her voice barely audible. If she does not flee? Ali paused, looking at his mother's face. Then Allah forgives her. He slid the folded will under the pillow, embroidered with Fatima's wedding date in fraying thread. He stood up. As he left the room, a single gray hair from his mother's head was coiled around his finger, with everything Ali planned revealed. What choice would you have made if you were Fatima? Answer in the the comments. The mosque doors burst open. Inspector Khalil stood there, silhouetted against the sunlight. 2 officers were behind him. Fatima dropped the chisel. It clattered on the marble floor. Fatima, Khalil said, "It's over." She didn't run. She stood up slowly, her body aching. The imam watched her, his expression one of sorrow. At the police station, Fatima sat across the table from Inspector Khalil. The wooden box, dried and warped, sat between them. The waterlogged photos were spread out. Khalil played an audio recording. It was Fatima's voice, cold and sharp, followed by the sound of a slap and the mother-in-law's whimper. "Your husband was very thorough," Khalil said. "Hidden cameras, audio recorders. He documented years of this." Fatima looked at the box, at the photos, at the small memory card. She looked at the recording device. She looked at Khalil's face. She looked at the empty space beside him, where Amina stood, watching her, her face etched with pain and pity. I hated her," Fatima whispered. Her voice was rough. "She reminded me of everything. I tried to escape," she confessed. She told him about the withheld food, the forced medication, the physical abuse. She told him about her father and the kitten. She told him about the rage that had consumed her. The words poured out, a torrent of ugliness and pain. Amina listened, tears streaming down her face. Fatima was taken away. A village knew. The photos, the recordings, her confession. The story spread like wildfire. Amina used the inheritance to ensure the mother-in-law received the best care possible in the hospital. She visited her every day. Months later, Fatima sat in a small concrete room. The walls were bare. The air was cold. There was no wooden box here. No photos. No recordings. Just the quiet hum of the prison. She looked at her hands. They were no longer trembling with rage. Sometimes she thought about the old woman. Sometimes she thought about Ali. She thought about the empty box sitting on a shelf somewhere, a symbol of everything that was lost. She had run, but she couldn't escape. Not from herself. Not from the truth.